house too quiet, and something in my gut told me things would never be the same. What started as a casual family dinner turned into a night that shattered the very foundation of everything I believed. I wasn't prepared for the truth that would unravel right in front of my eyes, a truth involving someone I never imagined could be part of something so heartbreaking. That someone was my own sister. Growing up, we were always close. Not perfect, but we had a bond that many envied. We shared secrets, dreams, and 1,000 late-night laughs. She was the one I leaned on when life got hard, and I always thought she'd be the last person to hurt me. That night, however, proved how little we sometimes know about the people we trust the most. The betrayal didn't come from an enemy, a stranger, or even a friend, it came from within the family. And that's what made it unbearable. It started with little things, subtle signs I chose to ignore. Strange behavior from my husband. Sudden changes in my sister's mood. Quiet glances that meant more than I realized at the time. I brushed them off as stress, bad days, maybe just my mind playing tricks on me. But when puzzle pieces start fitting together in a way you never expected, the picture that forms can leave you speechless. That night, everything came to light, accidentally, painfully, and without warning. We were all gathered in the living room after dinner. My husband had stepped outside to take a phone call. My sister offered to help me clean up, but something about her felt off. Her hands shook slightly. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Then I noticed his phone buzzing on the table. One message. One name. One moment that made time freeze. It wasn't just what I read, it was the realization that followed. I didn't want to believe it. I stood there, phone in hand, heart pounding in my chest like it was trying to escape. The message wasn't explicit, but it was intimate. It wasn't some random contact, it was saved under a nickname only our family used. My sister's nickname. At that moment, everything I thought I knew came crashing down. My mind went blank. My legs gave way. And I remember my sister rushing toward me, eyes wide with panic, but I couldn't hear her. All I could hear was the sound of my own world collapsing. That night didn't just break my trust, it changed my identity, my beliefs, my understanding of love, family, and loyalty. I had to face a version of the truth that felt like a nightmare. What would you do if the people you trusted the most turned out to be the ones hiding the deepest secrets? What happened next was something I never expected, not just from them, but from myself. But that's where it truly begins. I sat on the floor that night, trying to make sense of what I had just seen. My hands were cold, my heart numb. My sister stood over me, her mouth moving, but I couldn't hear a thing. I wasn't ready to look at her. Not yet. Not after seeing that message. It wasn't just a casual chat, it carried emotion. Familiarity. It spoke of shared memories I wasn't a part of. And that's what made it worse. It wasn't just betrayal. It was the hiding, the pretending, the lying, from both of them. The more I thought about it, the more things started making sense. The late-night texts he used to hide. The sudden change in her, how she started coming over more often, always at times when I wasn't home. How she knew little things about him that I never shared. I had always chalked it up to their friendly bond. He was charming, and she adored him. But I thought it was harmless. I trusted them both. That trust now felt like a joke. Growing up, my sister and I were inseparable. She was the loud one, always full of life, while I was more reserved. She looked out for me in school, fought off bullies, and even helped me sneak out for my first date. When I introduced her to my future husband, she welcomed him like a brother. I still remember the day she said, "He's perfect for you." But looking back, maybe she meant something else. I started replaying past conversations in my head, trying to figure out when things started going wrong. Was it last Christmas when he forgot my gift but somehow remembered her favorite perfume? Or maybe the time I was sick for a week, and she insisted on dropping off dinner only for him to be the one handing it to me, saying she had to rush somewhere? The clues were all there, scattered like broken glass, and I had walked barefoot over them without realizing. I didn't say anything that night. I didn't scream. I didn't confront. I just sat there, quiet, broken, and unsure of what I should feel. My sister tried to explain, but I wasn't ready to listen. Not yet. I needed answers, but more than that, I needed the truth. And I wasn't sure I was strong enough to face it. Because if what I feared was real, this wasn't just infidelity. This was betrayal by blood. The days after that night passed in a blur. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I was moving through life like a ghost, pretending everything was okay when inside, everything was falling apart. My husband acted normal, maybe a little too normal. He kissed me goodbye every morning, asked about dinner plans, and scrolled through his phone at night like nothing had changed. But I had changed. I couldn't look at him without wondering what he was hiding behind that calm face. My sister, on the other hand, kept her distance. No calls. No texts. Not even a single visit. It was like she knew I had seen too much and didn't know how to face me. I kept thinking back to our last conversation before all this, how she hugged me so tightly, told me she was proud of the life I had built. That hug didn't feel like pride anymore. It felt like guilt. And now I was stuck in the middle of something I didn't ask for, torn between two people I once trusted more than anyone else. I started checking small things. Old phone records, deleted messages, even social media. There were gaps, silent months where he was working late and she was taking time off. Photos that didn't add up. Comments that felt a little too personal in hindsight. I was unraveling the threads of a story that had been playing out behind my back, quietly, for who knows how long. And the more I found, the more I realized this wasn't some one-time mistake. This felt deliberate. But even in the middle of all that, part of me didn't want to believe it. I kept thinking maybe I misunderstood something. Maybe the message I saw wasn't what I thought. Maybe there was a reason. But that little voice inside me, the one that had warned me before, kept telling me the truth was right in front of me. And I was just too scared to admit it. One night, I found a photo in my husband's drawer. It was old, printed, tucked between some papers. It was of him and my sister. Alone. Somewhere I'd never been. They were smiling. Too close. Too comfortable. My hands started to shake again. I knew I needed answers. But I also knew that once I opened that door, there would be no turning back. And the worst part was, I wasn't sure whose story I'd uncover first. I kept staring at that photo long after my hands stopped shaking. It wasn't just the image, it was the feeling it gave me. A quiet confirmation. Their closeness wasn't just imagined. It was real. And hidden. Something about it felt intentional, like a moment meant to stay private. The smiles weren't forced. The way her head leaned into his shoulder, it didn't look like family. It looked like something else entirely. I sat there, frozen, with questions swirling in my mind. How long had this been going on? Why didn't I see it sooner? And most painfully, what did I do to deserve this? That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay next to my husband, pretending to breathe steady, pretending to be okay. But inside, everything was burning. I kept glancing at him, wondering if he could feel the tension in the room. He turned toward me in the dark and gently pulled me closer like nothing had changed. But I had changed. My heart wasn't where it used to be. It was sitting on the floor of that drawer next to a photo that shattered everything I believed about love and loyalty. The next morning, I called my sister. She didn't pick up. I called again. Nothing. So I went to her apartment. I sat in my car outside her building for over an hour, trying to gather the courage to face her. I watched people walk past me, laughing, talking, living like the world wasn't crumbling. When she finally stepped outside, her face dropped the second she saw me. She froze. I stepped out slowly, our eyes locked. We didn't say a word at first. But everything we needed to say was in that silence. She tried to speak. I held up my hand. "Don't lie," I whispered. Her lips trembled. She looked like she was about to cry. But I wasn't ready for tears. I wanted the truth. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen," she finally said, voice shaking. I stared at her, heart pounding. "Then why did it?" Before she could answer, my phone buzzed. A message. From my husband. Just 2 words, "We need to talk." I looked at the screen, then back at her. Everything was falling into place. And I knew that whatever happened next would change everything forever. My hands were still trembling when I read his message again, "We need to talk." It wasn't like him to say something so direct. He was the type to beat around the bush, to deflect, to play things cool. But this felt different. My sister stood there, eyes wide, face pale, like she knew something I didn't. And in that moment, I realized, maybe I hadn't seen the full picture yet. Maybe there was more to this than just the betrayal I thought I already understood. I didn't say another word to her. I turned around, got in my car, and drove. My mind was racing the entire way home. A part of me was prepared to confront him, to demand answers, to finally say out loud what I'd been silently suffering. But another part, deep down, was afraid of what else I might uncover. Because if he was ready to talk, that meant he had something to say. And if he hadn't said it already, it probably wasn't something I was going to like. When I walked through the front door, he was already waiting in the living room, phone in hand, like he'd been pacing. He didn't look surprised to see me. If anything, he looked exhausted. He motioned for me to sit, but I stayed standing. My silence said more than any words could. He took a deep breath. "There's something you don't know," he started. I almost laughed. The irony of that sentence. Of course there was something I didn't know. My whole life had turned out to be something I didn't know. But then he said something that made my blood run cold. "It's not just about your sister," he said slowly. "It's about your family." I frowned. "What does that mean?" He hesitated. Looked away. Then finally said, "You remember last year, when I was in that car accident?" I nodded. He'd only suffered minor injuries, a sprained wrist, a few bruises. I took care of him for weeks. "Well," he continued, "while I was in the hospital, someone came to see me. Your father." That stopped me cold. My father and he had never been close. They tolerated each other, sure, but that visit? It never happened, or at least, not that I knew of. He stood up, walked to the drawer, and pulled out a small envelope. He gave me this. Told me if things ever got complicated, I should give it to you. My heart dropped. He handed it to me, and I stared at the name on the front, mine, written in my father's handwriting. Tearing it open, my fingers trembling, I pulled out a folded letter. The first few lines changed everything. My throat went dry. "If you're reading this, then you've discovered more than you were ever meant to. But before you judge anyone, you deserve to know the truth about where it all began." I looked up, breath caught in my chest. My husband didn't speak. He just nodded. And that's when I realized, this wasn't just a story about infidelity. This was a family secret buried so deep, it was never supposed to come out. I unfolded the letter with shaky hands, each word pulling me deeper into a truth I never imagined. My father's handwriting was clear, careful, like he knew this moment would come and wanted every sentence to matter. He wrote about choices, about regrets, about how sometimes protecting someone meant keeping them in the dark. But what hit me hardest was a sentence near the middle of the page. "There was a time in my life when I made a mistake that changed everything, and that mistake involved your sister's mother." I read the line over and over, heart pounding louder with each pass. My father and her mother? That couldn't mean what I thought it did. But the next part confirmed it. Your sister is not your cousin. She's your half-sister. I kept it a secret all these years because I didn't want to hurt your mother. And when she passed, I thought burying the truth was the best way to protect you both. I felt the floor shift beneath me. My entire reality twisted. She wasn't just my sister by title, she was my sister by blood, closer than I'd ever known. All those years, all those moments we shared, all the trust and love, it was built on a lie we never saw coming. I sank into the couch, stunned. My husband sat quietly, letting me process. I didn't know either, he said after a long pause. Not until recently. She told me the truth after the accident. That's when things changed. I looked up. So she confided in you? He nodded. She was scared. Angry. Confused. She thought the whole family lied to her. That's when we got close. Too close. I won't make excuses for what happened. It was wrong. I betrayed you. But it didn't start out that way. I felt like I was being torn in two. The betrayal still stung, but now it was tangled in a web of deeper pain, years of secrets, generations of silence. My sister hadn't just crossed a line out of desire. She was spiraling from a truth she never chose. And my husband, weak and lost, got caught in it with her. I took a deep breath. Where is she now? He hesitated. She left. Said she couldn't stay in this city anymore. She didn't even tell me where she was going. I sat there in silence, not sure if I felt relief or heartbreak. Maybe both. But just when I thought I had heard everything, he pulled something else from his pocket. A small photo. Not of her. Not of us. But of a baby. She's pregnant, he said quietly. She didn't want you to find out from anyone else. The room went still. And in that moment, I realized the story wasn't ending. It was just beginning, again, with more pain, more questions, and a future I never saw coming. I stared at the photo in his hand for what felt like hours. A grainy ultrasound image. The tiniest form of life, yet it carried the weight of everything that had broken us. My chest felt tight. I didn't speak. I couldn't. So many thoughts ran through my mind, pain, betrayal, anger, confusion, but beneath all that, something else settled in too. Acceptance. Not of what happened, but of what was real. What I could no longer change. The truth was out. My sister, my blood, had crossed a line I never thought possible. My husband had betrayed every promise he ever made. But in the middle of all that destruction, there was now an innocent life, a child who had no part in this storm but would forever carry its weight. That thought humbled me. It broke me, yes, but it also grounded me. In the following days, I made my decisions slowly. I told my husband I needed space, not just from him but from everything. I moved out of the house, stayed with an old friend, and started therapy. Talking helped. Writing helped even more. It gave me a place to put the pain, to make sense of things that never made sense. I stopped trying to figure out every why and started focusing on the what now. I never heard from my sister again. I don't know where she went or how far she ran, but I hoped, deep down, that she found peace. I don't hate her. Not anymore. I understand now that she was lost in a history none of us asked for, a past full of secrets passed down by people who thought silence protected love. It didn't. It only made the wounds deeper. As for my husband, we eventually met one last time. He apologized, not just for the affair, but for every lie that followed it. He told me he planned to be there for the baby and that he'd carry the weight of his choices for the rest of his life. I believed him. But belief doesn't always mean forgiveness. We parted ways that day, and I knew it was the end. Now, months later, I've started to rebuild. I've learned that true healing doesn't mean forgetting, it means choosing to move forward with wisdom. Love isn't about blind trust. It's about honesty, accountability, and respect. I still believe in love. But I believe more in truth. If you've ever experienced betrayal from someone you never expected, know this: you are not alone. Infidelity is not just about broken hearts, it's about broken identity, broken trust, and the long road to finding yourself again. My story isn't perfect. It's messy, painful, but it's real. And sometimes, the realest stories are the ones that hurt the most, but teach you who you truly are in the end. 41.